Welcome to the Protagonist Pub. No pickles. My name is Tammy, and today we're going to talk about the romance cheating post from last week. So, in my first Book Tea with Tammy video, I referenced the short and the longer video from Lila Rose. They're linked in the comments and the description box down below. And the gist of the short was that reading romance is cheating on your husband. And in the short, they had clips of one of the Pride and Prejudice movies. And a little later on in the clip, it's clear they're talking about eroticism, but it was a poorly done clip, and it's out there in the ether, and I need to talk about it a lot. I need to talk about it a lot. As I said in the clip, I do not agree that reading romance is cheating on your husband. I just do not. And in talking about it with my girlfriends, opinions vary, but for the most part, it's nonsense. I think we can all agree that eroticism, it's dark romance cousin, whatever the heck that is supposed to be, and any of that just one step above blatant written pornography is not romance. I don't know why it gets classified as romance. Nobody I know would classify it as romance, whether you are a secular reader, a religious reader, or not. I don't think anybody classifies that as romance, and to equate it with romance is in and of itself disingenuous. I think all normal, intelligent people believe that that kind of material, be it written or photographic or videos, is harmful to the human, married or not, in a relationship or not. It is not healthy, it is not normal, and I don't think anyone is advocating that that is in any sense what a typical romance reader reads. Okay, now that that part of the discussion is out of the way. So is your average romance novel cheating on your husband? In my opinion, it is absolutely not. And I could have gone into a long discussion about the evolution of the romance novel from, the earliest writings all the way to the present day, but you all are more than capable of doing that research for yourself. And it is much more interesting, I think, to talk about what passes as romance these days, the concept of a book boyfriend, and the detriment that, that can have on a relationship. So, what passes for romance these days? In my opinion, it's everywhere. It's in almost every subgenre. It has its own genre, which is filled with subgenres. It is almost impossible to pick up a book and not have a romance thread in that book. In fact, I would say it is rare to actually pick up a book that does not have at least some hint of romance going on in it, which is normal. Because love and community and finding a person to share your life with is what makes us human to begin with. I don't have a problem with that. Do I think it needs to be in every novel? I don't. Do I enjoy the novels I find that, that don't have it, or in which it is a very minimal role in that book? Oh, I absolutely do. That being said, I would be lying if I said I didn't pick up the occasional romance book. And we all know I love me a good rom-com that's, well written. And, there are so many types of romance novels. From the, what I consider ultra clean, in which, if they kiss in the book, it's a stunning revelation. To, the opposite end of the spectrum, in which there is so much open door sex going on that the book begins to border on being something else. Pickles, nobody needs to listen to your commentary. You've never had a girlfriend, so shush. Yeah, you can shush. He just shook his head no at me. So, and romance has existed in novels for so long that it would be abnormal if it didn't exist. From the wife in Chaucer's Canterbury Tales to Elizabeth and Darcy in Pride and Prejudice to, Rhett Butler and Scarlett O'Hara and Gone with the Wind to, any book you can walk into your library and pick up today. I think there is a difference, however, between what was written prior to the last 25, 30 years and what's being written today. The old stuff was much more about the emotional connection between two people and the spark of chemistry, and are we compatible as humans? And if not, what are the consequences of that incompatibility? And the repercussions of making choices solely based on emotion versus using your head. Quote unquote, modern romance is much more about the feeling, the spark, the over-the-top romance, he treats me like a princess, than it is, do we have shared values? Do we have a foundation upon which to build a life? Do we have things to discuss? We're losing that. It is like out of the windows. Yes, there are exceptions to that big, broad blanket statement, but in general, and obviously this is just my opinion, we are losing the foundations of a relationship for short-term feeling. And I really think that this, especially in the last 15 plus years, is due in large part to the over overarching and overreaching role that social media plays in our everyday lives. And it is affecting books. It's affecting how people react and relate to characters in books, and then expecting reality to mirror fiction, which is then completely tainting the idea of romance. This is a very generic, but I've seen this repeatedly example, especially on Instagram. Some nice young woman gets flowers from the man she's dating, and it is not some big extravagant bouquet. He picked up a bouquet of flowers at the grocery store, at the gas station, side of the road, and he brings it home, and she then posts a public story reel trashing him and the flowers she got because he didn't spend enough money. They weren't roses. They weren't, some big, huge, extravagant display. Instead of realizing that he thought about her, he took time to buy her a bouquet of flowers, bring it home, and just a small gesture that said, "Hey, I was thinking about you and I love you. I brought you flowers." I would be thrilled. I have been married. We've been together for 22 years. We will be married for 22 years later this year. I don't expect flowers from my husband. If he brings them home, I am overjoyed. If he brings me a plant that flowers and I get to put it in my garden and look at it every year, I am ecstatic. Do I expect him to bring me flowers? I do not. Would I ever consider going on the internet and trashing him because my version of what that bouquet should look like differed than the bouquet he bought me? I absolutely would not. And I think romance has turned into not the emotions between the two people involved in the relationship, but a game of one-upsmanship on the internet. And that is not the foundation upon which you build a life together. It doesn't work that way. It may work that way in books and in movies, but it doesn't work that way in real life. And you now have this phenomenon that's everywhere of normalizing what happens in a movie or in a book as what real life should be. And those things are so not related. They're not even in the same boat. Stories, be they on the big screen or on the page, come from somebody's mind of a fictional, perfect world in which everything goes according to plan. And that plan exists in the author's mind. It doesn't exist in reality. I can give you an example. We have been married a long time. The other night I was folding laundry, and it turns out my favorite nightshirt somehow got a piece of hard plastic fused into it in the process of being washed. And I was devastated. First of all, it's my favorite. Can't replace it because they don't make it anymore. And I tossed it downstairs. Dave was downstairs watching something, and as I tossed it downstairs where our laundry room is, I said, if it doesn't come out in the wash, I'm going to be devastated. And I went back upstairs to finish folding laundry. That's all I said to him. It wasn't a big deal. It's one of those little things in life that was irritating at the time, and I overreacted, and in the long run, it was a nightgown. It wasn't a big deal, but my husband went and picked it up from where I threw it and sat there, and for the next half hour, without me knowing about it, without making a big deal out of it, he picked it out, didn't damage my nightgown at all. He brought it upstairs and showed me what he did. It was the most romantic thing he's done easily in the last 6 months. Is it a giant extravagant bouquet of roses? Nope. Will I remember that much longer than a bouquet? Oh, I absolutely will. Because he took the time out from what he was doing to do something for me that meant something to me. That is what romance is. So, back to the point. Is it cheating when you read a romance book? Only if you think that what happens on the page is a reflection of reality. In which case, the problem isn't the book. The problem is your personal perception of reality. And if you're in a relationship, there are already bigger problems going on that have absolutely nothing to do with the book or the movie or the reels on Instagram. It has everything to do with the person who gets so attached to a fictional character that they expect their real life to mirror that. And that is the only situation in which I can fathom it comes remotely close to cheating. Fiction isn't reality, and you cannot expect. Most of us married in long-term relationships do not have spouses that read romance novels. So how can we expect what we read on the page to translate into real life? And in reverse, how can you expect your real life to be reflected on the page? Your relationship is unique to you and your spouse. Just like my relationship is unique to us. And what works for Dave and I may not work for you and your husband. And you may not yet appreciate the fact that his brain functions vastly differently than yours. And men show their love, in my experience, watching my parents and my family and friends, very differently than women do. Men do things for us. It may not be big romantic gestures. It may be little things. He puts gas in your car. He makes sure your car has air in its tires. He changes the wiper blades. He takes out the trash. He puts the kids to bed when you're really tired. He walks the dog when, you're moody and the last thing you want to do is go outside and walk the dog. Those are all very clearly acts of love. And yet, in our everyday lives, it's very easy to overlook them, misinterpret them, and become frustrated with said acts of love, because they're not showy, they're not something to brag about, they're not anything you're gonna throw on an Instagram post and throw up to the world that, oh, my husband did the dishes, or my husband took out the trash without me asking. That's what romance is, ladies. It isn't the showy, bouquet of flowers. It isn't a spontaneous trip to Vegas or a big flashy engagement ring. Those are all meaningless in the long run. In the long run, romance is the life that you build together day after day, one small act at a time, one unselfish decision at a time, to put the other person in front of you, to put someone else's needs and wants ahead of your own. Is it sexy? Is it flashy? Nope. Is it work? It absolutely is. And anyone who tells you that marriage and relationships aren't work is lying to you. Romance is something that little girls fall in love with. A relationship is something two people spend a lifetime building. And I will tell you, it has ups and it has downs, and it has, the proverbial peaks and valleys. And if you only focus on the emotional highs and get angry at the lows, you're going to spend a miserable life in a world you created for yourself. And if romance novels, that subgenre in particular, the genre of romance and all of its vast subgenres, are contributing to your unhappiness or not allowing you to see beyond the fictional page into reality, then the books are a reflection of a problem. They're not the problems themselves. I still don't think romance books are cheating. I think if any book, be it a romance book, fantasy, whatever, becomes the point of obsession, the book isn't the problem, it's a symptom. And the problem lies with the reader and the content they are choosing to consume and emulate their life on, and not the content itself. I do not think romance books are cheating. I do not think that this comparison trap of a world we are building via social media and instant gratification and why didn't you do that for me is healthy. It does not build a sustainable life that can exist on its own 2 feet. You need the ability to see the little things as being far more meaningful than big romantic gestures. Are big romantic gestures satisfying, and do they, make you feel good? They do for a little while. They absolutely are a dopamine hit. But that dopamine hit is very fleeting. It doesn't last. It isn't a way to get through every single day. Because eventually, if your life is built and your love is built on dopamine hits, what do you have when there are no more dopamine hits forthcoming? What life have you built? I cannot fathom a world in which a dopamine hit relationship is healthy. Because eventually it's exhausting, it's financially draining, and it requires bigger and bigger hits to get the same effect. So what then? So do I think The Short had value? I do think The Short had value, but not in the way its creators intended. I think it has value in the sense that you can now sit down and have a conversation with yourself and your husband. Am I getting what I need out of this relationship? And are you providing what I need out of this relationship as things stand today? Turn off the phone, turn off the computers, turn off YouTube. Is what we have enough? Or am I using a book to satisfy a need that isn't existing in my relationship? And do I understand what romance means to you? And do you understand what I need from you in terms of romance? It may not be a comfortable conversation. It may not be a comfortable conversation, but it's an important conversation to have with yourself, to have with your husband, and to find a path forward that you're both comfortable with. Romance can be a great read. It can make you laugh. It can remind you why you fell in love to begin with. It can remind you, who your husband once was, who you once were, even though you're very different people at this stage of your life. But what it cannot be is reality. As for the whole book boyfriend trend, phenomenon, whatever you want to call it. Yes, it's existed for a while. I'm not going to lie. At some point, we all fall in love with the character on the page. Pickles the bird. No. But usually that ends by the time the book concludes. If that turns into multiple reels on Instagram, if that turns into you writing, journal passages about said book boyfriend, if you start comparing real life men or your husband to said book boyfriend, then we have gone past a fictional read and we have identified a problem with ourselves. Because no man is ever going to be able to live up to the idealized version thereof contained in a romance novel. He's never going to be as fit. He's never going to be as cut. He's never going to be as funny or protective or romantic or rich or spontaneous as the guys in a book. Hate to break it to you if you're still single, but real men don't work like that. They just don't, ladies. Real men are messy and loud and, they fart and they burp and they forget to take out the trash and they are creatures of habit. And yet, they do things we never think of on a regular basis. Out in public, he always knows what's around you. He always identifies the threats, has them going in his head, and knows the escape route. He walks beside you on the curb so that if, you're out walking the dog and the car goes off the path, he gets hit first so he can push you out of the way. He's the man that stays up all night long when there's a bad storm so that he can handle things that may occur to keep you safe. He's the one that goes off to war so that you don't have to. Men are built different. We're built different. We are two sides of the same coin. We are a reflection and a helpmate to the other. We are not meant to be the same. We do not have the same version of romance. We never will. And yet, without them, our lives would be very sad indeed. So, in conclusion, in general, I absolutely do not think romance books are cheating on your husband. I do not. If you are so emotionally attached to a fictional character, the problem is not the fiction. The problem is the real life relationship. And only you can change that. Romance books cannot. So, do you want to end on a hopeful note? There are some great modern romance books that deal with really regular people. So the first one that comes to mind is The Do-Over by Sheridan Peterson. We have two completely normal people with completely normal jobs who find their way to one another and have the foundations that will build into the future. It's a great example of a realistic romance that is at the same time incredibly funny and incredibly relatable. Another great example is The Buy-In by Jenny Proctor. This is a little more on the unrealistic side in the fact that the protagonist is an ex-professional athlete whose dad buys the entire town, but the actual romance between them is built on a foundation of things they have in common and very relatable situations, and not his professional athletic career, the family money, and none of that. It isn't the show, it's the foundation that exists between the protagonists in The Buy-In. Another really good example is the Molly Chase series by Rhonda Ortiz. This one is historical fiction. Last book was just published here beginning of April. of this year. And this is definitely a romance that is built on a foundation of what these two people have in common, not what they can do for each other. And the last great example I'm going to give here is Love in the Eternal City by Rebecca W. Martin. This one takes place in Italy. He's a Swiss guard, and she works for a charity. And yes, his family has money, and he could, lavish riches upon her should, he wish. But instead, what do? They build a foundation. And it isn't because of his money, it's because of what they share in common and how they acknowledge everything that's gone on in their past lives to build a life in the future together that has a feet firmly set on the ground. It isn't about big showy things. It's about that foundation. And they're all great guys. Every guy in those books I just mentioned are fantastic. And sorry, we've had a lot of hawks this morning. Great examples of the kind of guy you want to meet in real life and fall in love with and build a foundation with. But they're not anything more than that. They're just examples of possibilities. They're not actual real life men. And it is possible to read romance, good romance, not a lot of the slop that's out there, but good romance. And if you're unmarried, to find characteristics you find attractive in the opposite sex. And if you're married, to spark a conversation with your husband, to take a moment to reflect. Am I doing my part in the romance equation? Because it isn't all on the guys, ladies. Let's just be honest. We are as equally responsible for keeping the romantic spark alive in our marriage as is our husband. And failure to recognize that is part of the problem too. So, pick up the books and take a moment to reflect. Am I doing everything I could do? Am I picking up his dirty socks off the floor and just putting them in the laundry versus nagging him to pick up his socks off the floor because I'm not his mother? Pouring him a cup of coffee in the morning versus just letting him get it himself. Offering to make him a sandwich because you're hungry. They're little acts. They're little acts of love, little acts of service that build a life, that sustain a marriage, that keep the spark alive, that lets your partner know that even in the minutia of the everyday, screaming kids and bills and exhaustion from work and, the house deciding that the water heater is going to blow up this week, that you're still loved and that I still took a moment out of all of that chaos that is real life to do just a little thing that says I love you without actually saying the words I love you. So it is an interesting conversation to have, mostly with yourself, your spouse, But in general, reading romance isn't cheating on your husband. It's only cheating on your husband when you take it well beyond the page. And then it turns into a moment of self-reflection and a chance for personal growth. So, there are my thoughts. And trust me, after almost 22 years of marriage, I can tell you that marriage every day is a choice to put in the work, is a choice to say, today has been hard and we may have had words and I still love you. Today is the choice I am making to say I do all over again. And it isn't because you brought me flowers, and it isn't because you made some grand romantic gesture. It is because I know that no matter what happens in life, you have my back. That's what love is. Please leave a comment down below, like and subscribe, and I will see you here next time at the Protagonist Pub.